At my sister's 18th birthday coming-of-age ceremony, the whole village gathered around her in a bustling and noisy manner. Old Ding at the village entrance rubbed his hands and smiled, saying, "Jejia, I even held you when you were little." Aunt Zhang next door beamed and said, "Jejia, this child has grown up to 18 in a blink of an eye. Look, in the future, she will surely have no trouble getting married." Upon hearing this, Uncle got anxious. "What? Getting married? Jejia is still young." I looked at the villagers somewhat blankly, and then turned to my sister with a puzzled expression. Ever since my sister was rescued after fainting from a diving incident last time, she had completely changed. My sister, who was originally self-deprecating due to a birthmark, was now completely unreserved and even regarded this birthmark as a symbol of good fortune. She said to Uncle calmly, "The lotus mark is a proof of good fortune. If you have something to ask for, I will surely bless you." At that time, Uncle was depressed because he had just spent a large sum of money on my sister's medical bills due to her drowning. Hearing this, he grabbed a broom and rushed towards my sister, hitting her. "You little wretch! How dare you deceive me with such words? I'll beat you to death, you money-wasting girl." My sister pursed her lips and remained motionless, for she knew well that only when Uncle vented enough anger would he feel better. After Uncle was tired from beating, he still had an idea. My sister lowered her head and told him a series of numbers. The next day, Uncle stared at the winning lottery numbers on the screen for a long time in silence. After coming back, Uncle was overjoyed. It was a full 1 million yuan, an amount he could never earn in his entire life. He stared at my sister as if she were a cash cow, with envy in his eyes. He wanted more, but my sister refused, saying that one person could only be blessed once. Uncle could only leave disgruntledly, while Aunt Second got excited. She pushed me aside, who was still there, and squinted her eyes with a smile, asking for a blessing. Aunt Second's family wanted a baby boy. "Please, Jejia. I've had 3 daughters in a row, and there's still no boy in the family. We've been looked down upon in the village." My sister nodded again. "Okay." She led Aunt Second out and soon brought back a bowl of dark, extremely stinky medicine. Aunt Second didn't hesitate and drank it in one gulp. At the same time, her belly began to grow bigger day by day. She happily showed off to everyone she met. The doctor said it's a baby boy. With a baby boy, I can hold my head up high in the village. My sister's reputation spread far and wide, but I noticed that the lotus mark on my sister's forehead seemed to have deepened in color. The villagers' attitude towards our sisters changed. Uncle used the money to build a 3-story small Western-style building in the village, with white bricks and black tiles, extremely beautiful. Aunt Second was pregnant, and the doctor said it was a baby boy. Aunt Second was extremely happy and showed off all day long. From then on, the whole village firmly believed in my sister's ability. They came to our house to ask for blessings, and Uncle took all the money and food they brought. The villagers were all in high spirits. One day, the village head also came to our door, hoping that his son could get a promotion. My sister paused as if wanting to say something, but the next second Uncle took the things and said cheerfully, no problem. I'll let him in right away." My sister stared deeply at the village head and then, as usual, whispered a word in his ear. A few days later, good news came. He passed the exam. This is the first time in our village. We must definitely find a day to celebrate. The village head beamed with joy, and the whole village was filled with happiness. But I noticed that my sister greeted everyone in the village with a smile, except me. My sister and I are orphans. Our parents died early and Uncle brought us up. To be honest, it was more like we fended for ourselves, because Uncle only gave us a meal occasionally. He wanted to use my sister to get money, but unfortunately, my sister had a birthmark on her forehead. It wasn't ugly, but in Uncle's eyes, a girl with a disfigured face meant she couldn't get married, and not being able to get married meant no money to be obtained. So, Uncle made her do all the housework at home, cooking, mopping, washing clothes, cooking, and transplanting rice seedlings. My sister did everything. Even though she was diligent and hardworking, Uncle still called her little wretch and money-wasting girl all the time. My sister often shed tears but never made a sound. She always stroked my head and coaxed me. Get out of here and everything will be okay. Get out of the mountains." We both knew how slim the chance of that day coming was, but in our hearts we still hoped to get away from this family. Rent a house in a big city and live a happy life, just the 2 of us. Unfortunately, neither my sister nor I waited for that day. My sister was defiled. The man was the village head's own son, Song Jiaqing, who was also an outstanding young man in the village. He said that my sister deliberately seduced him and wanted him to marry her, but it was out of the question. The villagers all said that my sister deliberately seduced him, but I didn't believe it. My sister, like me, hated this place to the core. And usually, she had little contact with Song Jiaqing. Why would she go to great lengths to seduce him? Soon the village fired my sister from her job. Uncle pointed at my sister's nose and cursed, "Bitch! Shameless bitch! You've made me lose all my face in the village. Can't you live without a man? Why don't you just die? Go and die." Sister's eyes were rimmed with bitterness, her tears seemingly parched by the wind. Her lifeless gaze, dull for days, finally flickered with a ripple of emotion. Yet it filled me with dread. I screamed and lunged forward, desperate to seize her, but in the next instant, she plunged straight into the lake. Ever since sister awoke from her sickbed, she had become a stranger. Once she moved through the world with cautious steps, avoiding others, only softening ever so slightly at the sight of me. But now she smiled at everyone, acquiescing to every villager's demand. Her eyes remained the same, yet I could find no trace of the sister I knew. No matter how I tried to speak to her, she ignored me. Watching her encircled by the crowd, I sighed and turned to leave, when suddenly she spoke. "When you come back early." I spun around. There she sat on the rush mat, and for a fleeting moment, her gaze seemed to brim with pity, or was it mockery? I rubbed my eyes. It must have been a trick of the light. Still, it was the first time in so long she had acknowledged me. Overjoyed, I nodded fervently. On the day of sister's coming-of-age ceremony, an old Taoist priest arrived in the village. Dressed in faded robes, his wispy beard lending him an air of otherworldly wisdom, he drew the villagers like moths to a flame. They clamored for divinations. "Your fortune is cursed, a life of poverty," the old priest declared. Uncle's face darkened. "Fraud," he spat. "Poor? Nonsense. Get lost before you ruin the celebration." The crowd murmured in agreement. Thanks to sister's lotus destiny, Uncle was now the wealthiest man in the village. How could he be doomed to poverty? Undeterred, the priest seized Second Aunt's wrist, his fingers tracing invisible lines. His expression twisted in shock. "You bear the mark of a barren womb, yet you're with child? Impossible." Second Aunt recoiled, furious. "How dare you? You're the one who'll die childless, you wretched old fool." She stormed off, leaving the crowd to disperse. All but me. I stood frozen, staring at the priest. With a sigh, he turned to leave, then paused, his gaze locking onto me. His fingers danced as he calculated my fate, his frown deepening. "The destinies in this village defy reason." He pulled me aside, demanding, "Has anything unusual happened lately?" I hesitated, then spoke of sister's drowning, and the change that followed. His eyes widened. "Was she born under a year? Month, hour? Am I not?" He paled. "Your sister is already dead." I wrenched free, lashing out. "Liar. She's alive, you're cursing her." I hurled stones at him, my voice trembling. "You're just a fraud like they said." Unfazed, he gripped my arm. "Listen. Her soul was claimed by the water. What walks in her skin is a vengeful spirit, feeding on the villagers' greed. By the next full moon, when energy peaks, it will be unstoppable. Your entire village will perish." My hands fell limp. His words rang with terrifying plausibility, yet how could I believe them? To me, sister was still kind, still mine, even if her forehead bore a blackened mark and her smiles had grown distant. The priest pressed a sachet into my palm. "On the 15th, when the spirit is strongest and weakest, sprinkle this on her. It will save your village." Reluctantly, I accepted. He added me on WeChat, muttering, "This requires further investigation." Second Aunt's pregnancy progressed unnaturally. Her morning sickness was relentless. She wasted away as the fetus swelled to the size of a 4-month child in mere weeks. Her belly, marred by angry stretch marks, repelled even second uncle, who now refused to share her bed. When she came to sister for advice, sister smiled serenely. "This is a blessing. All women endure this, your child thrives. You'll be fortunate indeed." Reassured, Second Aunt preened, boasting through the village. Others eyed her with envy, their whispers laced with bitterness. The village descended into madness. Uncle won the lottery, then gambled his windfall into greater wealth. Second Aunt miscarried, only to conceive again, convinced the lotus spirit would grant her a son. The chief son soared through bureaucratic ranks. All hailed sister as the reincarnation of the lotus immortal, her blessings infallible. Yet sister remained eerily serene. On the morning of the 15th, she declared it the most auspicious day. Her blessings would magnify. She warned uncle not to disturb her, lest he break the spell. Desperate to keep his golden goose, he obeyed. But I remembered the priest's warning. Peering through the door crack, I saw sister seated on her mat, her raven hair cascading like silk. Then she peeled off her skin like a garment, revealing a grotesque, bloodied skeleton beneath. Her head swiveled toward me. A guttural whisper slithered through the air. Asterisk, you cannot escape. Asterisk. Ice flooded my veins. My sister was truly gone. This thing wore her face like a mask. I fled, but it pursued. In desperation, I flung the priest's powder, and collapsed into darkness. In my dreams, sister smiled gently. Asterisk, be happy, Wenyuan. Asterisk, then flames consumed her as the villagers watched, unmoved. I awoke screaming. By daylight, sister was herself again, sweetly asking after me. How could I accuse her? That evening, under the full moon, the villagers swarmed her, clamoring for wishes. I want riches. A beautiful wife. Power. When my turn came, I met her eyes. I wish for sister to live. The crowd erupted in outrage, except sister. Her smile widened. All your wishes will come true. My phone buzzed. The priest's message. Asterisk, never wish upon the black lotus. Its gifts demand life in return. Asterisk, too late. A chill wind swept through as the chief's son stepped forward, his gaze feverish. I wish to marry you. The unspoken name hung in the air. Sister's lips curled. The reckoning had begun. Once these words were uttered, the entire audience fell silent, yet what prevailed was anger. The Lotus Fairy was the common treasure of the whole village. How could she be monopolized by one person? Gradually, the villagers' expressions changed. The village head even slapped Song Jiaqing in the face and shouted angrily, "What are you talking about, you fool? This is the Lotus Fairy." The village head demanded that Song Jiaqing apologize to my sister, but Song Jiaqing stubbornly refused to bow his head. Looking at his face, I finally understood. I had previously wondered why Song Jiaqing had defamed my sister. Now I realized that it was because he hated the way my sister held herself high and rejected him, so he chose to ruin her. But now, seeing that my sister had become the Lotus Fairy, he plotted with the village head and made this wish on this day. He was confident that my sister, having received his offerings, would never refuse. But why? Why could he get whatever he wanted? Bastard! I screamed and rushed forward to hit him, but he pushed me away with a single shove. My sister, however, slightly curled her lips. I almost forgot about you, she said, pushing through the crowd and walking up to Song Jiaqing from a distance. There was still a smile in her eyes. I will fulfill your wish for you. Hearing this, Song Jiaqing laughed heartily and walked out of the door. As I watched these people in their crazy state, I felt my heart turn completely cold. It was more like a carnival of desires than a wish-making. I knew every face of these people, yet at this moment they seemed extremely strange. What I couldn't understand even more was why my sister would agree to Song Jiaqing. Or was this also a complete revenge? Cold sweat dripped from my forehead, and I dared not think further. Soon the village began to be engulfed in a terrifying atmosphere. The first one to go wrong was my uncle. He had obtained 1 million yuan through that lottery ticket and kept amassing wealth. In just a few months he had actually got 5 million yuan. At this time, however, he became addicted to gambling. At first it was 100 yuan, then 5,000 yuan, 10,000 yuan, 100,000 yuan, and finally he even staked his entire fortune. However, he lost everything. He was so desperate that he even staked me and my sister to the other side. My sister refused to sign, so he started to abuse and beat us crazily. There was no ripple in my sister's eyes, and she seemed indifferent to the beating. Finally, my uncle, as if possessed, actually jumped off the building. His obese body smashed into a pool of blood, with his eyes wide open in death. My aunt started to get pregnant frantically. She had fulfilled my sister's wish, and each child was supposed to be a boy. However, after the first child had a miscarriage, the others didn't fare any better. The second was a stillborn baby boy, and the third was a baby boy with hideous lotus patterns all over his body, extremely ugly. My aunt was unwilling to give up and had become almost insane about having a son. She eventually died on the operating table. It was said that when she died, she was still shouting, "I want to give birth to a boy." After these incidents, the villagers were in a panic. The village head, holding a torch high, came to my doorstep and spat hatefully. Bah! What Lotus Fairy? I think she's clearly a harmful monster. Right. Burn her quickly, burn her. At this moment the expressions of these people changed again. Full of righteous indignation, the village head and Song Jiaqing even forgot that just a month ago, they had wanted to take me to their homes. The fear of death hung over everyone. I pushed my sister and said, "Aren't you the Lotus Fairy? Hurry up and leave. They want to burn you." My sister remained silent, until almost all the villagers surrounded her, bustling around. The higher they had once held her up, the more they now spurned my sister. They tied my sister up and threw her into a room. My sister's body was pinched all over, and there was not a single good spot left. The women in the village all cursed her, blaming her for shattering their dreams of being mothers, while the men all leered at her with lewd expressions. Constantly, men came out of her room looking satisfied. I knelt on the ground and begged the village head. "Please let her go, let her go. She didn't do those things." I made feeble excuses with tears streaming down my cheeks. At this moment, what I thought was that even if this person wasn't really my sister, what she had done was avenging my sister. And what these villagers were doing now was no different from forcing my sister to death back then. I glared at them, feeling that everyone in this village deserved to die. I gritted my teeth and pounced on them. The village head let out a shrill scream. I tore a piece of flesh from the village head's leg. The next day, my sister was tied to the gallows surrounded by torches. With a shout from the village head, the raging fire began to burn. I wanted to rush forward but was pulled away. The torches burned my sister's body until nothing was left, leaving only a little bit of ashes. I held it and slowly put it into a box. As I was doing this, I started to cry. If before I could deceive myself into believing that my sister had never disappeared from this world, today I finally woke up. Whether this person was my sister or not, she was dead and would never wake up again. I fell seriously ill. The villagers heaved a sigh of relief because of my sister's departure. Everything seemed to return to normal. However, they didn't know that the revenge of the Black Lotus had far from stopped. That year, there was a severe drought in the village's fields. The villagers borrowed water in a flurry and transported it from a distant place. They hoped for a good harvest this year. However, strangely, once the water seeped into the ground, it disappeared quickly like a snake. The village head didn't believe it and led people to water the fields several times, but every time they failed. The villagers all said it was the Black Lotus taking revenge. But who was it taking revenge on? As soon as this question came up, everyone faltered and refused to speak. Eventually, Song Jiaqing found an expert from the provincial city to survey the land problem. The expert said he had never seen such a thing and had to report it to the higher-ups. After many twists and turns, the land problem was finally solved. No one mentioned the Black Lotus anymore. But in the year when the crops were about to be harvested, there was a locust plague. Those locusts seemed to have eyes. They didn't eat the crops of the neighboring village but only those of our village. The whole village had no harvest at all. Many people were starving and the whole village went crazy. Among them, Song Jiaqing was the first. He said that at midnight, he always saw Su Shiyuan smiling at him barefoot. And the next day, he was found sleeping with my sister's ashes in his arms. He was so scared that he trembled, saying that someone was playing tricks. However, after checking the surveillance, it was clear that he himself had come to our house and taken my sister's ashes away. I pursed my lips and finally remembered that he had made a wish to the Black Lotus. I want to marry you. Now it had actually come true. Song Jiaqing started to fantasize all day long that my sister was his girlfriend. He even stood up and suddenly went crazy at work, saying things like, "Wenyue, I love you. I want to marry you." He made indecent moves in public and was soon fired. He became a homeless person in a daze. Finally, because he was fighting with others for food on the street, he was beaten to death. On the day he died, his black and white mourning clothes somehow turned into a red wedding dress. The people who were burying him were so frightened that their souls almost left their bodies. But no one dared to move, so they had to bury him in the coffin as it was. Only then did I understand that this was what my sister meant by coming true. Since Song Jiaqing's death, the people in the village found that they could no longer leave. The whole village was like a prison, and everyone was a prisoner waiting to die. Without food or water, they could only kill and torture each other. I knew in my heart that this was because everyone was an accomplice in killing my sister, the culprit, and the onlooker perpetrator. I thought that my day might also come soon. When I came to the rooftop, the person's red clothes were fluttering wildly in the wind. I said, "My sister never liked to wear such clothes." She covered her mouth and giggled. "I'm not her. I'm the Black Lotus." She told me that the mark on my sister's forehead originally represented twin lotuses, hermaphroditic. When the female lotus withered, the Black Lotus would take over this body. I was a bit surprised and said, "You're a man." She laughed again. "You can think so." I nodded and asked her, "When will my sister come back?" She pursed her lips and asked me, "Do you two sisters really have such a good relationship?" I didn't answer. Where should I start? Su Wenyuan and Su Shiyuan were originally the best sisters in the world. Su Shiyuan said, "Sister, if possible, I want to take you away from here and live a carefree life." Su Wenyuan said, "Sister, life without you has no meaning. We grew up together and will naturally move towards the end together." They depended on each other. There was no Su Shiyuan without Su Wenyuan. I asked again, "Will you really fulfill my wish?" She smiled and said, "Of course. I never lie." "Then please bring Shiyuan back, bring her home." I closed my eyes, spread my arms, and stepped forward without hesitation. If it took my life as the price to bring my sister back, I was willing. Just as I was about to step out, I felt a hand suddenly grab me. I opened my eyes and found it was the Black Lotus. She gently sighed and hugged me with my sister's appearance. I couldn't help crying. Maybe she wasn't my sister, but at this moment, she gave me the same comfort as my sister. She then said with some hesitation, "But your sister's body is gone, and I also promised Song Jiaqing to let him marry her." I had a bad feeling and trembled, saying, "So my sister can't come back, right?" After saying that, I completely broke down. The Black Lotus was at a loss. After finally stopping my tears, she hurriedly said, "Don't cry." I didn't say it's impossible. I opened my eyes wide and looked at her. She sighed and said, "You're really hard to deal with. Wenyuan, go home early." After saying that, her figure disappeared in front of me. This sentence was very familiar, as if my sister had said it to me. I vaguely sensed something but felt that something elusive flashed by. I couldn't wait to rush into the house. At this time, there was a lotus flower inserted in the large vat at the door, with tender green stems and a small bud. I ran forward excitedly. Could this be my sister? I burst into tears. After crying for a while, I only heard a man sigh. "Hey, they're all dead indeed." It was the old Taoist. He murmured to himself, "I said we couldn't make a wish to this Black Lotus." The old Taoist said that a few days ago, he thought about it and came back to take a look at this village. However, the whole village was shrouded in an invisible barrier. He tried his best but couldn't get in, and just now that confinement disappeared. When he came in, he saw corpses all over the village. Did the confinement lift? I suddenly thought of something and asked, "Did the confinement lift because of the Black Lotus?" I didn't dare to think further, feeling more and more suffocated. The old Taoist seemed to see my confusion and said, "The Black Lotus and the White Lotus can't coexist. Now that the White Lotus has reappeared, the Black Lotus should be." The old Taoist looked at my somewhat disappointed look and changed his words, "Should be recuperating." Seeing that I was a bit sad, the old Taoist changed the topic. "You have to take good care of this lotus body. In the future, you can use it to reshape your sister's body." I nodded. Only then did the old Taoist stride out of the door. I left the village with my sister and went to the city we had always yearned for. Over time, this village was sealed off and became a well-known deserted village, with many terrifying legends about the Black Lotus circulating.